You're watching NewsX with me, Devika Chopra. Top focus continues to be the assassination attempt against Donald Trump. U.S. presidential candidate Trump suffered injuries to his right ear when a 20-year-old Thomas Matthew Crooks shot 7 bullets at him during his rally in Pennsylvania. This incident took place in Butler, Pennsylvania at around 6:10 p.m. of U.S. Standard Time on the 13th of July. Although his right ear was grazed in the attack, Trump was very quick to stand up and strike his signature fist pump in the air. The shooter was neutralized immediately after his attempt by Secret Service officers. The Secret Service team was quick to form a human shield around Donald Trump and escort him off the stage. He has survived the attack, and this may perhaps change the course of the upcoming U.S. presidential elections. We take this conversation forward with our guests. I have with me Ambassador J.K. Tripathi. We also have with us Mr. Raymond Vikri. I also have with me Adat Kothari and former Ambassador Yogesh with us as well. Let me begin this conversation with Mr. Raymond Vikri, Senior Associate, Center for Strategic and International Studies and Assistant Secretary of Commerce, with us on the broadcast. Mr. Vikri, thank you so much for taking your time to speak to NewsX. I want to begin by asking you what really has been the reaction of the American public ever since visuals of the assassination attempt have come out?
Well, thanks very much for having me this morning. It's really a sad day when violence creeps into the political sphere as it has. The reaction should have been according to Gandhian principles, the principles of Mahatma Gandhi, Martin Luther King, of coming together and condemning violence. Unfortunately, in our divided situation, that is not occurring either on social media or in news releases from various politicians and ordinary people. People tend to see this through their own partisan eyes, and that's extremely unfortunate. I think President Biden has shown admirable leadership in terms of condemning this, as have others on both sides. But it's a time when we have to get back to the principles of democracy. And it's time for great democracies like the United States and India to come together in defense of those principles, which, as I say, Gandhi and Martin Luther King and others have shown us as the way forward to peace and prosperity in our countries and in the world.
Mr. Vikri, do you somewhere feel that this assassination attempt will lead to a larger conversation about gun violence in the United States of America, or do you feel that this will end up being a political conversation and there won't be much focus on a real issue of gun culture?
Well, you're very wise to bring this up, and this is exactly the point. What should happen, of course, is a condemnation of gun violence. As you know, the shooter used an AR-15 style military rifle, which enabled him to get off 7 shots very quickly. This has been used time and time again in mass shootings in the United States. When Joe Biden was a senator, he got legislation passed which banned this kind of weapon. Unfortunately, that ban has expired. Should it result in a more serious look again at gun violence in America? Of course it should, but I don't believe it will. If 30 murdered first graders in Connecticut won't do it for you, I think nothing will. And we've seen again this business of people looking at this through partisan view, and you can rest assured that there are people who are advocates of a distorted view of the Second Amendment right to bear arms, who will say, well, this shows that you have to arm more good people so they can shoot the bad people. And of course, that is not the way forward. uh, Gandhi, Martin Luther King, any sane person can see that that just degenerates into more violence. I believe that there will be people again who will try to steer this conversation to real issues. But at this point, it's going to take some mighty interventions to be able to do that.
Mr. Vikri, will there not then be questions raised to the Republican Party also, basis what has happened, given that Joe Biden has made regulation of guns a big part of his campaign? Not just now, of course, it's been there for quite some time, but it is this time around as well. One can say that just a few days ago, he's spoken about how he wants to ban assault weapons in the United States of America and regulate guns in the US. But do you not feel that what has happened at Donald Trump's rally actually then somewhere raises questions that ought to be answered by Republicans who are being questioned by Democrats day in and day out for their stance and position on the gun lobby and gun violence in the United States?
Well, it certainly should. But history has shown that the Republican Party, the party of Donald Trump, will just double down, that will want us to go back to the days of the Old West when everybody was carrying a gun and you could pull it out and have shootouts. And there are too many people in the United States who believe that is the way forward. Eventually, a saner view of this will happen. And it may happen and may have some effect on the margins, the people who are undecided. There's no question that the diehards of the Trump constituency are not going to change in regard to rifles and guns of all kinds and descriptions as being a good symbol of America. That's not the America which I've known and deplore. You know, I was set to go to the convention in 1968 as a young law graduate with Robert F. Kennedy before he was assassinated. So we've been through these times. I think that we will come out on the other side with the help of other democratic friends like India and democracies around the world if we stick together. But it's rough times right now.
Mr. Vikri, at the same time, although this may not be the most appropriate time to be discussing the same, but there is already a lot of chatter about the political impact of what has happened. And one cannot deny the juncture at which this assassination attempt has taken place at a time when the Democrats are already feeling a lot of pressure ever since the first presidential election debate took place. Joe Biden is on a daily basis having to explain why he must be the face of the Democrats. And now, of course, this assassination attempt has taken place against Donald Trump. Do you feel that this could possibly have an impact on the elections?
Well, I think there's no question that it can at this particular time. You saw Donald Trump raising his fist and trying to put it into his image of strongman, defying various ghosts and goblins, which he says are out there, whether they be immigrants, whether they be his political opponents, which he describes as vermin, whether he wants to lead another attack on the Constitution and the Capitol as he did January 6th. And so this will be fodder for him. He is a consummate reality TV performer. That's where he got his real start. And so it is, and it's, but on the other side of that, there are an awful lot of good people in the United States that will be able, over a course of time, to raise their own voices. And, you know, one thing we've learned in the United States about shootings is, unfortunately, they come to be kind of routine. We've got 3, 4 months here in regard to this campaign, and Joe Biden and others are trying to steer it in a more sane direction. And I believe that can happen. It happened in 2020 when people didn't give Joe a chance. Trump was riding high from his defying of COVID at that time. You remember how he put that into his narrative. This will go into the narrative, and it will have a rally round the leader effect immediately. But it's not over till it's over, and there's a lot to be done between now and November.
Yes, Mr. Eamon Vickery, thank you so much, sir, for joining us on the broadcast with your perspective and some ground opinion of what's happening in the United States of America. On that note, I also want to welcome former ambassador into the conversation, Ambassador Yogesh Gupta. Ambassador Gupta, what do you make of the message that has been sent out by Donald Trump right when the assassination bid took place? We saw that he ducked and he comes out, he emerges 2 minutes later with the security service agents forming a human shield around him, but his fist is in the air and he continues to say that I will fight. He's heard saying fight, fight, fight. What message has he sent out, sir, to the people of America?
Well, Devika, you have focused this conversation so far on the gun culture. That's an important aspect. But there are so many other important aspects pertaining to the US society, which I think require a certain amount of discussion. And one of the most important one is the kind of the social and political polarization that has taken place in the United States. More and more people, particularly those belonging to the middle and lower classes, and I'm talking of whites, these people think that they have been bypassed by the growth in the US economy or by the opportunities that the economic development has provided to the country as a whole. They haven't gained, their salaries haven't gone up, their employment prospects have not improved. And during the presidency of Joe Biden, lot of illegal immigrants, they have been allowed to come. In fact, some people say that there is virtually no barrier to the entry of illegals in the United States anymore during the presidency of Joe Biden. Then the economic and social prospects of these people have deteriorated. There is so much of spread of violence and so on. So I think people are crying for a change. And it is unfortunate that Joe Biden is trying to insist that he wants to be leading the Democratic Party while there are so many doubts among leading Democrats whether he should continue or not. But even in regard to the candidacy of President Trump, people are not extremely happy about that either. But then, but with the two options, I think there is a desire for change. That desire for change is coming out, and I think it will be manifested in the election results that are going to come after the elections in November. From here on, I think President Trump is he's on an upswing, and it will be very difficult for Joe Biden to catch up with him in case he continues to be a representative of the Democratic Party.
Okay, but I want to bring in Ambassador Jacob Tripathi as well. Ambassador Tripathi, does Donald Trump then get a boost from what has happened? As Ambassador Yogesh Gupta was also pointing out, that it seems, in his opinion, that there is a need for change, that the American society wants change. Within that change, does Donald Trump then get a boost as far as the events of 13th July are concerned and their impact on the elections?
Well, Devika, yes, I agree with Ambassador Yogesh Gupta that people want a change, because people had seen Trump in his last tenure, and now they have seen Biden also, which is in some cases, in some aspect, it is worse. As he pointed out, and Ambassador Gupta pointed out, that unemployment has grown, immigration, influx of illegal immigrants have been there. So these things have created a sort of dissentment among the local youths who are now thinking, who are now blaming Biden for uh, giving their jobs or giving their opportunity to others who don't deserve. So that is one thing. But as regards your specific question, whether this incident of yesterday will boost the image or popularity of Donald Trump, yes, it will to a certain extent. Because I said certain extent because right now the uh, atmosphere is very electrified with Trump saying "I'll fight" and Trump putting victory signs. So people will have sympathy with him. People will think him as a leader who is fighter, as against Biden, whose health, mental or physical health deterioration is quite a point of concern. But one should not forget that the actual election is still 3 months, August, September, October. And in these 3 months,
Right.
public memory, which is quite short, there might happen something else or some other development which might swing the voters in favor of Biden. So
Okay.
it is still premature to say that Trump will carry this sympathy till
Okay.
November primaries.
Okay, all right. Very interesting perspective there. But also joining us live from Washington, D.C. is Mr. Ray Locker. He's an author and presidential historian. Mr. Locker, thank you so much for joining us on the broadcast. I want to begin by asking you, sir, how is the public in America reacting to the assassination attempt?
Well, it depends on where you are on the political spectrum. I mean, there have been calls from people in the Trump camp, his supporters on the right wing, who say, you know, Democrats are responsible for this. Their criticisms of Trump led this guy to shoot at him. I don't see any evidence of that. We don't know what motivated the shooter. I mean, elsewhere from Democrats, starting with President Joe Biden on down, they've said that this is a terrible thing to have happened, and it is. And so, I think that's the way things are going to be. Republicans are going to their national convention today in
Yes.
Milwaukee, so we're going to hear more of this from them, and we'll see how this all plays out as we learn more about the shooter.
Okay, on that note, what have you really learned about the assassin so far, Mr. Locker?
Well, we know that the shooter is a 20-year-old white male, a registered Republican from nearby town in Pennsylvania. That's it. I've seen reports about what kind of T-shirt he was wearing, but I don't know if that's true or not. We don't know anything more about this guy, and we don't know what his motives were. And they could be anything. I mean, some people commit crimes because they want to start a race war. And so I don't think that he was a far left political operative. I don't know. I don't know anything about him. And, that's going to be up to the authorities and law enforcement to figure out who this person is. I'm sure by now there are hundreds of journalists fanning out all over Western Pennsylvania to find friends and family members of the shooter, to find out more about him. And so I think the picture will become clearer by the end of today and by the end of this week. And we'll know more. Now, that's not going to stop people from speculating.
Yes.
And it's not going to stop people from trying to score points from this, because that's
Right.
just the way things are, unfortunately. So there's a lot, we need to find out. Remember in past political assassination attempts in this country, when George Wallace, who was running for president in 1972, was shot, there were operatives in the administration of President Nixon who wanted to plant incriminating evidence in the shooter's home to try to make it look like he was part of some Democratic cabal that was trying to get Wallace. And so that didn't happen, but people talked about it. And so there's all sorts of things that can happen in an event like this,
Right.
and we just have to be on guard to make sure that we're looking at, accurate sources of information, things that have been vetted by a number of people, so we're not, blindly spouting out rumor and innuendo that could be totally wrong.
Okay, Mr. Loka, at the same time, we may not know enough about the assassin at this point in time, but there are in fact a lot of questions that are being raised about the security lapses as well. What really is the explanation that has been given so far about the security lapse at the rally?
Not that I have heard. I mean, it seems very irresponsible not to have had people on every nearby rooftop to make sure that this doesn't happen. I mean, I've seen aerial photos of the area, and I've lived in Washington for a long time. I know where there's security, whenever a president or a political leader is outside. And it seems like a serious lapse not to have somebody on that particular rooftop, where he was able to get shots off at a presidential candidate and a former president. We're going to find out more about that in the next few days. And I know there have been calls for investigations in Congress, and I hope they're legitimate investigations that look at all the different facts and come to a reasonable conclusion. But it was a serious lapse, and I don't know why it happened, and I'm not going to speculate on why it happened.
Okay. Mr. Locke, at the same time, I just want to understand from you, as far as the political impact is concerned. Now, we've seen Joe Biden really talk about regulation of guns in the United States of America, once again as part of the larger campaign of the Democrats. He's spoken about a ban on assault weapons as well. But do you feel that somewhere, because of what has happened, this could possibly put the Republicans on a bit of a back foot as far as a culture of gun violence is concerned? Because Joe Biden has very clearly said that it's the Republicans who will never really ask any questions of the gun lobby, but we, the Democrats, want to bring in changes. How do you see this playing out politically as far as the gun lobby and gun violence in America is concerned?
Well, it should. I mean, their candidate for president was shot at by a guy with an assault weapon that he should not have had. Maybe it would be different if that person was shot by another person with an assault weapon before he took a shot at Trump. That didn't happen. The guy shot at him. He killed somebody. He almost killed the former president. So, I mean, people should take stock of that and look and say, maybe we shouldn't have all these guns floating around. Maybe we shouldn't let people buy an AR-15. I just don't know. I don't think that they're going to do anything about it, because we've had many horrific gun attacks in this country over the last 20, 30 years, and we haven't done anything about it.
Absolutely. Mr. Loka, before we let you go, you pointed out that not much has been done in the past few years itself. But why do you think this culture of political violence also continues in America?
Because we have people who, express violent rhetoric. They talk about, things need to be done. We need to save this country. I'm not sure who we're saving it from, but they say that. And that encourages people who aren't very stable to take matters into their own hands. And we have a lot of guns. And so we have people, I think they're mostly on the right wing of our culture, who are saying, we need to defend ourselves and we need to do this and do that. And sometimes those messages fall on different ears in strange ways, and people go, I need to do something about it. And that thing is to kill somebody or to shoot at somebody. And it's really nothing new. We've had a culture of violence in this country since the very beginning. We glorify things like in the Old West, where people settled their differences with firearms. And so, that's a hard thing to stop. Now, it's not every day and it's not all over the place, but yes, it happens, and it happens way too often for my taste.
Well, Mr. Raylocker, thank you so much, sir, for joining us on the broadcast with your perspective. Unfortunately, that's all the time that we have on this broadcast. We leave it there and slip into a very, very short break. An exclusive interview with Kapil Dev coming up on the other side. Stay tuned.